pretty good.
Mine says 47. I have a completely different number. Okay.
Non-speakers.
Okay, everybody. Well, I guess I want to say thank you to all the juniors for joining. And in particular, a thank you to our alumni that are here today to share information about their careers and about the courses that they took in their senior year, their technical electives. And so the whole point of this meeting is to kind of help you think through what you want to do when you graduate and how the classes that you take next year will help you reach that goal, and how those classes that you plan to take, your technical electives with design, your other technical electives, how they kind of will prepare you to take the capstone. So Professor Kaminski is also here, who's the capstone instructor, to kind of talk a little bit about the structure of the capstone. So what I wanted to start with doing is kind of like a really quick, brief overview of the structure of your senior year, the technical design electives. And then we're going to spend the rest of the time talking to the alumni, so you can ask them questions. They'll tell you about their careers and the courses they took, and then hopefully we'll have plenty of time to ask them questions. So I don't want to spend too long talking at all. So I'm just going to switch to a quick PowerPoint presentation so that I can kind of remember everything I wanted to say and do it as efficiently as possible. So as I said, you can spend most of the time actually learning from our alumni, and hopefully we'll have plenty of time for questions. So let me just switch this. Okay. So as I said, the whole point is to really try and help you right before you start registering for your classes, think about what classes you want to take both in the fall and the spring. So just remind you that in the fall, you need to take CIE 415, that's professional practice with Professor Kaminski. You want to take at least one elective, technical elective with design. We actually recommend 2, but at least 1. Then another technical elective, or as I said, that's your second design elective, your GIS elective, and then a UB curriculum course. Now you might change a little bit depending where you are in your UB curriculum sequence. Some of you may have already taken your GIS elective, others might decide to push that off until spring. But those are the typical classes that you might take fall of your senior year. So what are the design electives, the technical electives with design? Well, there's steel design and reinforced concrete design. So they're both structural engineering design electives. There's CIE 436, traffic operations and design. It's a transportation class. CIE 475, geometric design of highways. So another technical elective related to transportation. There's CIE 476, design and construction of earth structures, if you're interested in geotechnical engineering. And then CIE 442, which is water treatment process, if you're interested in more water resources, environmental engineering. So as I said, the requirement for the curriculum is you take and pass at least 1 technical elective with design, but we recommend that you take 2 because that will really prepare you to take the capstone design course in the spring. So I said, but you have to take 1. Students that are interested in the environmental water resources area, and Caitlin will talk to you about her experience and what she does and the courses she took, you would need to take CIE 442, which is water treatment process, as your design elective. But you also need to take CIE 444, which is hydrologic engineering. So just remember that both of those courses are prerequisites for the environmental engineering capstone class, which is CIE 449. So everybody takes 416 unless you want to focus in the area of environmental water resources, in which case you could take 442, 444 in the fall. That will prepare you for the environmental engineering capstone course, CIE 449. The other note here is just that we do recommend, if you can, to take the 4-credit GIS elective, because that's where you learn ArcGIS. It's really useful if you're in transportation, geotechnical. So if you can, it's not going to fit everybody's schedule, but that is recommended over the 3-credit class if you have room in your schedule. So if you think about the different areas of civil engineering, and we have an alumni that's going to speak to these particular areas, you might be interested in structural. So as I said, if you are, then your design TEs are steel design and reinforced concrete. Both of them are offered in the fall. There is a possibility that reinforced concrete may be offered in the spring, but we're not sure about that. So don't rely on it. If you really want to focus in structures, I would suggest you might want to take both steel and concrete in the fall. So these are recommended to prepare you for the structural engineering component of the capstone. And then some of the classes that technical electives that you might consider taking: Structures 3, which is in the spring, Applied Math, which is in the spring. We're not sure whether we can offer the Revit class, CIE 424, in the spring. That kind of depends on what the allowance is for hiring adjuncts. There's also finite element analysis, but that's one of the classes that I often recommend students, if they're going to go to grad school, they leave until they're a graduate student. And there's a couple of good graduate classes that some undergraduates take, like fire engineering or masonry. So those are some of the courses that you might consider if you're interested in structural engineering. Those interested in transportation, as I said, traffic operations and design and geometric design of highways, those are both offered in the fall, and I'd recommend that you take both. Other courses, there's a full elective traffic demand forecasting, CIE 440. In the spring, there's CIE 437, which is pavement design. Those interested in geotech, right? Don't forget that's my area. So I'm hoping that there's plenty of people interested in geotech, but we only have one design elective in the fall, which is CIE 476, design and construction of earth structures. So if you want to go the geotech route, if you want to be prepared for the capstone, the geotechnical component of the capstone, then you want to take 476 in the fall. And then potentially you could take 438, which is advanced foundations, in the spring, or you could take pavement design, you could take groundwater, brownfields restoration. There's a variety of other courses that you might be interested in if you want to pursue geotechnical engineering. So they talked a little bit, environmental engineering, water resources. You would take 442 as your TE with design, remembering that you also need to take CIE 444 hydrologic engineering. And that would, those two classes would provide the prerequisites that you need for the environmental capstone, CIE 449. And there's plenty of other technical electives you could be interested in. 441, which is pollutant, fate, and transport. Groundwater, which is 445. Sustainability, 447. I put it there with environmental water resources, but that's a really great class for anybody to take. So think about that if you just want to pick up a general technical elective. A student in any area would I think get a lot of value out of taking sustainability, air pollution, and then brownfields restoration. And then some of you might say, I don't really want to do design, I want to do construction. And Kennedy's here, she works for Kiewit, so she's going to talk about the courses that she took and what she's doing now. But anybody who's in construction needs to have some foundation in design. CIE 416, which you all have to take and pass, is a culminating design experience, right? So you need to have a background in design, whether it's structures, transportation, geotechnical. That's up to you depending on your interests, but you need to take at least one design elective, I said maybe two. Other classes in this area that you might be interested in, I put sustainability here again, but estimating, which is 491, which is offered this fall. Project management, 493, it's also offered this fall. Likely will also be offered in the spring. And we used to be able to offer 491 and 493, both fall and spring, but last spring we only taught project management. So I think if you want to, if you want one in one semester, one in the other, I would take estimating in the fall and project management in the spring. So some of you might say, well, I really don't even know what area I want to go into yet. I think I like geotech. I'm not sure about structures. Well, you don't have to focus in only one area. So if you are sort of toying between the two, you might want to take reinforced concrete design for one of your design electives, and then maybe design and construction of earth structures. Or you might take one in the structures area, one in the transportation area. So you don't have to pigeonhole yourself into one of those areas if you still aren't sure. And, and that's pretty common. So don't feel, like you have to choose one of those areas. You can choose classes across different areas. So if you took a design elective related to structures and you took a design elective related to geotech, you could, when you got to the Capstone Design Project course, either participate in the structural engineering project or the geotechnical engineering project. So that this is my last slide. So I didn't want to talk very long at all. So this is just from Professor Kaminski. You can chime in here because this is your course. But the way CIE 416 is set up now is there's three main components: structural engineering component, a geotechnical engineering component, and transportation engineering component. Based upon the design electives that you take and pass, that will determine which component of the capstone you can participate in. So you can't take steel and concrete and then decide, I really didn't like structures. I want to participate in the transportation engineering component of the capstone, because you don't have that required design background in order to really contribute to the project. So it is important when you're thinking about your design electives, choosing them, knowing that that's going to determine which component of the project you can participate in. And as I said, those students that are interested in environmental and water resources, so you can elect to take 442 together with 444, and then that would prepare you to take the environmental engineering capstone course. Professor Kaminski, do you want to add anything to that?
Not really. I'm just not on that particular slide, but on the construction piece, as you probably know, we don't really have a construction management program at UB, but we just started, Mustafa was the first president actually last year, the AGC student chapter, and we just had a kickoff last week, and hopefully you received the email that I sent with a little enticement to join. And we had a kickoff meeting last week. We elected some officers, and more to come on that. So look for that if you're interested in construction. That'll be a great student organization to be part of. And the other thing I would just suggest is, of course, not everybody is an A student. And some students took one TE with design and did not pass it. And they were not able to take the capstone. So it set them back. So that's another reason to take more than one TE with design, and maybe in a different area. You could take them both in structures or both in transportation, but as Professor Human said, if you're not really sure, then take one in a couple different ones. And besides getting exposure to different things and see what you really might want to do for the next 30 or 40 years, it also gives you a kind of a safety net to make sure if you struggle with one of them, that you can pass the other and you can get in a capstone, just kind of as a practical matter. Because we did have a few students kind of fell into that boat. I think I can just answer questions later on the capstone. I think just to kind of give you an idea of the split, this year we have 112. We have 31 teams. They're typically teams of 4. The geotech are teams of 3. And we have 3 geotech teams. We have 7 transpo civil site, we call it. We throw in a little bit of civil engineering and site engineering, mostly transportation engineering though. We have 7 of those teams, and then we have 15 structures teams, and it's design of a warehouse type building. So I think I'll leave it there, and then we can let the students ask questions.
Okay. So does anyone have any quick questions on the structure before we move on? And I will introduce the alumni, and we'll kind of go through the order that I have them in the flyer, which was by first name alphabetical. So, but does anyone have any quick questions before I introduce the panel members?
So for the design capstone class, you need to take it and pass at least one technical elective for that class, or is that one technical elective for each semester?
No, you have to pass one technical elective with design, right? So either concrete, steel, traffic operations and design of highways, water treatment process, or design and construction of earth structures. So you have to pass one class that has a focus in design, and that's preparing you to go on and take the capstone design course.
What else? What other technical electives do you need to be able to enter the capstone class?
There are no those. The other classes you take are based upon your interests, and they're not prerequisites for the capstone. So the capstone is simply passing 415 and one of those technical electives with design.
That's it. Those are the only prerequisites, is
Yeah.
take and pass 415 and one of the tech electives.
Yeah.
And what is CIE?
Not tech electives though, but tech electives with design. So just to
design,
be sure
yeah.
there's no confusion.
Oh yeah, tech electives with design. Oh yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. So with that, I am going to, let's introduce all the alumni just really quickly, and then we'll go around with Alex starting. So first, Alex Stefani. Alex, just say hi. He is a structural engineer. Braden,
Hey guys, how's it going?
Braden Hawkins, Geotech.
Hey.
Caitlin Taberka, Environmental
Hi.
Resources.
Hi, guys.
Kennedy Colon, Construction, and Mustafa Shakur, Transportation.
Hey guys.
All right, so Alex, take it away. A little bit about your career path and what you do now, classes that you took.
Sure thing. So I went to UB back in 2017. I graduated with my undergrad, and then I went back for grad school in 2018. For grad school, I went for structural and earthquake engineering. And then after graduation, I've been working at SGH ever since. So I've been there for almost 3 years. I'm currently a project consultant, which is basically a structural engineer. My day-to-day usually, I'm working on a big project in New York City right now. I'm designing a museum. That's like my big premier project. And then I work on a bunch of other little projects, some investigative projects, some repair, redesign, some forensic projects. So I get to do a little bit of everything. Most of the stuff I do is building design, but with the structures background, you can also go into bridge design as well. When I was at UB, I took steel design and I took concrete design as my two electives with design. I also took the Revit class, which was very helpful, especially with my career path. Nobody basically works in AutoCAD anymore. Everything is in Revit for structural engineering. So it's a good class to take. When I was doing my master's here, I took the fire course. I also took FEA. I didn't get a chance to take wood or masonry. I learned those on the job, but I would say that the two most important or widely used electives would be steel and concrete.
Thanks, Alex. Braden, Mr.
Okay.
Geotechnical.
So I'm a geotechnical engineer at Musa Rutledge. I graduated University of Buffalo just last summer for my master's and the year before for my bachelor's. For tech electives, I took almost every one I could. I took steel design, I took earth structures, I took advanced foundations, I took applied math, I took groundwater, and I took FEA, and I took structures 3. So just basically every single one. I'd say the most useful one has been obviously earth structures. I didn't take reinforced concrete design, which would have helped, but it's really, you can take whatever ones you are most interested in, and a lot of the stuff I've learned on the job. I've had to use AutoCAD and MicroStation, neither of which I took a class for since 2014 in high school for college credit. So they do teach you if you miss stuff. So I would just say take whatever you want, like are most interested in at the time. My day-to-day is either, if I'm working on a big project, I just do whatever is going on. So like just this past fall, I spent about 3 months working on the Bruckner Express in New York City, if anyone knows what that is. So we were doing pile designs, and I was doing the site classification. So I took the hundreds of boreholes, put them into Excel, tried to get the data, and then tried to figure out how deep we had to take the piles. And now I'm working on small projects. So like today I was doing some slope W and some settle 3 to try to get settlement and slope stability, both of which we learn in earth structures, thanks to Theva. But that's about it. It's a lot of
And
fun.
then Braden, maybe just a few minutes, and I should have asked Alex too, like a little bit about Musa Rutledge. So
Okay.
kind of what kind of company is it?
Musa Rutledge is a geotechnical only company. I've heard a couple people in the office say it's the biggest office of only geotechnical engineers that they know of, which might be true because there's around
And probably the oldest too.
yep, since 1903. They have it a lot over the office. But they focus in geotechnical design. I know they've had their hands on almost every big project in New York City, it feels like. They did the Times Square redevelopment. They helped with retaining walls after 9/11. They've helped with the Tappan Zee Bridge. They've helped with a lot of the bigger buildings, like the big one now is the JP Chase Morgan building over in Upper Manhattan. So they just they do a lot of work on foundation designs. At the company, you can either focus on being like kind of an analytical engineer, like a field engineer, or you can just get a good, well-rounded mix of both, depending on what you want to do.
So if you want to be geotech, you can go the route that Braden did, which is work for a company that does only geotech, or you could be a geotechnical engineer in a bigger company, and that's your part of a larger project.
We
Okay.
get we get contracted through smaller companies. So like this WSP did the structural design for the project I was on. We don't touch it. So if you want a little bit of both, definitely try like a different company that's more well-rounded. But I like geotech.
Good, Braden. Just so you know, I used to work for Musa Rutledge too, so that's why I'm kind of partial to them. Caitlin.
Okay, I work at CNS Companies in Syracuse, New York as a municipal engineer. And so I do a lot of like utility, stormwater design, site development, which is grading, kind of dealing with stormwater and things like that. And I do a lot of like design work using Civil 3D and ArcGIS, as well as kind of construction inspections, particularly for stormwater, and ensuring that like the stormwater management practices are being installed correctly. I also assist at the Syracuse Airport, working as an assistant for the Director of Planning and Development, kind of helping assist with their master plan and overseeing some of their construction projects. And I also was kind of asked to do that role to take over their GIS expert. He was retiring, so I helped kind of compile maps and documents for them. So yeah, I use a lot of AutoCAD Civil 3D and ArcGIS, and I get to a lot of design in office work, as well as like construction oversight and things like that. As far as my coursework, I was the one who took like the water resource classes. So I took treatment processing and hydrologic in the fall, and then I took sustainability, groundwater, the environmental engineering capstone, and project management in the spring. And I think hydrologic kind of is the most important, or is the class I use the most, because with stormwater management, when you're doing site development, you kind of need to figure out what you're going to do with all the water when you add a bunch of impervious area. And so kind of understanding how water flows and how to kind of rates and volumes is super important for what I do.
And I'm assuming that you would recommend anybody who's thinking about following a similar kind of path should take the Geo 481, where you actually learn ArcGIS.
Almost definitely. GIS can be utilized for so many things, and I didn't take Geo 481. I only took the 3 credit course. And so everything is kind of self-taught for what I have, or like things I've learned from just like other people at work, but it's definitely super useful.
Thanks.
To put it on that, I've also had to learn GIS on the job because Mustafa has a GIS map of like all their previous borings, so it's definitely a useful class.
Kennedy.
Hi guys, so my name is Kennedy. I work for Kiewit as a E2 engineer. Currently in estimating, since we're all about civil, I'm just gonna talk about my experience with civil with my company. Currently, I'm a mechanical engineer, mainly because my company believes in making their employees well-rounded. And so our two biggest disciplines is mechanical and civil. So since I've had I was successful in civil, they felt it was time to go to mechanical. So for a year, I was a civil engineer and I just came off a project with LADWP. I'm in California right now. I think it's cool you guys offer wastewater, just a tangent, because I think it's important to look at the electives and decide where in the country you would like to work, because I didn't know in California, all the engineering work right now is water. So think about where you want to live and think like, okay, what work is in that area? And on top of what discipline you want to get into. So my electives was pavement design, still design microstation, and I did project management for construction. So I did a bit of everything, and honestly, they were all helpful with me. I was on a design build. The construction industry is actually going towards design build, so it's best to do design courses. Because my last project, I actually was put in charge of working with our designer to get our drawings to 100%. So, and it was just me in charge of civil, working with the designer, saying, hey, you called this out wrong. Hey, this isn't the right design. And so that was very important. And still design came in handy for me because I was actually in charge of designing our guardrail systems for both our projects. And I worked with the PE, but like the PE literally just looked at it and was like, okay, did your calculations right? So I had to like refer to all my books and stuff. So it's important to like, keep your books. But yeah, I would say for construction, just have a good wide variety in the tech electives you decide to go with design, and keep an open mind about it and just really learn material, because in construction, if you say you took a class, they're gonna be like, hey, you took this class, so do this project. So I spoke up about microstation, and they gave me a JV project that they had with Jacobs and said, hey, program this in microstation. So yeah, that's my tangent about that.
Thanks, Kennedy. So, and then representing transportation, talking about his experience with transportation, anyway, is Mustafa, who also is in California, right, Mustafa?
No, I'm actually right here in Buffalo. All right. So, yeah, my name is Mustafa. I currently work at CPL, also known as Clark Patterson Lee, but we dropped the names. As a junior transportation engineer. So what my day-to-day is a lot of roadway modeling. So pavement design, geometric design, traffic signaling, and yeah, a lot of drainage. So for that, we also use a lot of GIS. So definitely recommend you do learn that. And ArcGIS definitely important for getting a lot of survey info. So definitely spend time on that. Then I do a lot of pedestrian safety projects too. So curb ramps, sidewalks, and Clark Patterson Lee, CPL is actually a full service civil architecture and engineering company. So we also do a lot of architecture. So on the transportation side, I see a lot of landscape architecture. So for example, I'm just working on Jefferson Road right here on Canisius College. So we're redoing the whole corridor, adding a lot of green infrastructure, safe sidewalks, and better traffic timings. So you do get a really involved with community aspects. Then I also do a lot of traffic safety studies. So let's say a hospital wants to add a traffic signal, or a school wants to add a parking lot, studying the impacts on how it affects traffic in the nearby community. So, if you're going that route with traffic study and traffic safety, definitely recommend you take travel demand forecasting and traffic signaling. And my senior year, I actually didn't really know where I wanted to go, kind of wanted to experience everything. So I took sustainability, reinforced concrete. What else did I take? I didn't really take any transportation electives, but I started working at the DOT, so kind of got that government versus consultant side where I kind of like transportation more. So I would definitely recommend, if you are interested in transportation, you definitely take geometric design and traffic signaling. And what else is there? Yeah, I mean, for transportation, you could also get just the structure side with bridge engineering. So I found that at my company, I got a little involved with bridges since I did take reinforced concrete. Definitely helped me out with a lot of concrete design, also like designing drainage structures. So kind of recommend if you go that bridge route, you could kind of mix it up, take geometric design and reinforced concrete. So definitely explore your options.
Well, thank you, everybody. So now really this is open for students to have questions. So obviously there's various ways you can ask questions. You can type questions in the chat, and maybe Ava, can you monitor the chat and then ask those questions? Thank you very much. Or, you can unmute and ask a question. It's sometimes harder when there's a lot of people to do it that way, but we can, whatever works. You can put your hand up, not literally, but in the Zoom hand. But with so many of us, I don't think I have everybody on the screen. So, but somehow, ask if you want to ask a question, however you can get our attention. This is your opportunity to ask the alumni. Who's first?
I kind of have like a question. This is directed towards Braden, actually, because like you did like a lot of the different technical electives. How were you able to actually like balance all these technical electives, and did it come at like a cost of anything? And if so, like what did it cost?
Free time, but a lot of them, if they played nice together for the most part. I personally thought they didn't really hinder upon each other, except for my senior spring. I took Capstone, Groundwater, Advanced Foundations, and Applied Math. Don't do that. Capstone takes up a decent amount of time, but yeah, it's just time consuming.
So if you were to recommend like I guess a path that like would have like the most amount of these like different like projects, but also not take up as much time, like is there any like specific ones you highly recommend that every engineer would take that like wasn't I guess listed already, I guess, or not listed but like already recommended?
I think personally, I think Applied Math gave me some really good skills. It's definitely a harder class, but Professor Shim is incredibly nice and he's super helpful. One of the most helpful professors I've had. I had to miss a class and he sent me an email like right after the class and asked if there's anything I needed to go over. But that's one. It's helped me. My MATLAB skills helped me learn Visual Basic, which helps in Excel. If you're doing geotech, Advanced Foundations is incredibly helpful. I think it's just like a second capstone, basically. Theva sets up a project and you go through it. And since it's a smaller environment than Capstone, each week you just get like one-on-one with Theva going through what you did wrong. Steel design or concrete design, whichever one is obviously, the bread and butter if you're doing structural or geotech. And then Structures 3, if I had to drop one, I'd say I would drop either Structures 3 or Groundwater. Groundwater was useful, but I haven't used it too much in geotech, and Structures 3 is another one just since I did geotech and I did finite as well, and they have a lot of overlap if you end up doing both. So I'd say whichever one sounds the most interesting to you, just pick them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and don't forget, sometimes, you can sign up for a few, one more class and you really want to take and go to the first classes and then make a decision if you're not sure. I think not enough students do that, so that's always an option.
All right. Thank you. This will help me make my decision for next semester.
Another option you can have, let's say if you check the brief description of a course on UB, let's say website and so on, but then you may want to get more information, you can directly drop an email to professor, asking the syllabi and asking what will be the design components or design project in that course. And hopefully you will get a better idea how that course will run, what kind of skill set are you going to learn, or the design components you will get familiar with. And then you hopefully, so that will help you to make a better decision making.
All right, thank you. I might try that then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like the fact that Braden, you really stress. I think not enough people take CIE 411, applied math. It is a really great class. So it's certainly something that students should consider more.
I see why a lot of people don't, but it's definitely a lot of fun. And you don't need to plan your spring now is another thing like I would recommend, is because you're going to experience a lot in your fall. Everything's going to change. Like I was leaning a little towards structures in my senior fall, and you can see how that turned out. Now I just took earth structures and steel, ended up liking earth structures more.
Other questions?
I guess I have a questions more towards Kennedy and Professor Kaminski. It's more related to the construction side of things. So I'm finishing up. I'm definitely going in the construction side of things. I'm interning with Kiewit in the summer in Washington. So I guess what programs would you recommend? Because I know we talk a lot about programs, but what programs would you recommend to really knowing of as we now enter in the field to learn? Is it AutoCAD, is it Revit that we more utilize in the field in reference for construction related stuff?
Well, as far as programs go, I think I would ask the students who are working now, they're a little closer to it. I retired a few years ago and I was in transportation. So we use MicroStation, which is like AutoCAD. GIS is really, data management and data information is just a hugely emerging technology. It's used for everything. So I don't think no matter what field you're in, that's a great background to have, GIS. 3D building modeling, bridge modeling. Some people call it BRIM, building or bridge information modeling. That's being used. I don't know, Alex, if you're using that now, but everything's moving to 3D. So AutoCAD, Civil 3D, all of those have a 3D component, and they're all being shared virtually. So you can have different people working on the same building at the same time, and it's in real time and it gets updated. And now they're really moving that out into the construction field as well. So as you build the project, it gets put into the system too. So you can see what's going on. You can make payments. You can check the progress. So these things are all very emerging. They're not in widespread use, but they will be very soon because they're great tools for the construction industry to really know what's going on.
So Kennedy, what about what's Kiewit using?
So Kiewit is a genius when it comes to construction. They have capitalized on a lot of things. So Kiewit actually owns their own programming company, and so therefore Kiewit has their own programs. So we use like NA and things like that. So for those, you won't have access to that till you enter your career, and a lot of construction companies created their own programs. So for something that you have access to now, and they'll teach you how to use them, so don't stress out about that because they know you won't have access to it. But Primavera P6, which is like a schedule that all construction companies use, is something you could look into and maybe learn in your spare time. But we still use AutoCAD as contractors. We use AutoCAD, and I think they go SketchUp. They use SketchUp too. SketchUp, AutoCAD, and we use BIM 360 is coming out about right now, and Excel. So something I did my senior year was because a contractor told me like, hey, you need to know your Excel, which is, if you know Excel going into being in the construction world, you will stand out amongst your peers because I'm like in charge of coding a lot of sheets and doing things like that. So like I'm the go-to, and that's a benefit for me, is that my managers rely on me to make a lot of Excel sheets that my peers use to do their estimates. So I took a business course for Excel, and that's how I learned a lot of the codings and VLOOKUP and things like that. So those are some key programs I would say look into, and then just know that if you go into Kiewit, we have our own programs that they'll teach you on the job.
How do students learn Excel?
So I did business, and basically like you just need to code. You need to know like how to code your sheet, so that, because especially with design build, like we would do takeoffs and intervals of 30, 60, 90, 100. And I don't want to go in and redo my math. If I know that your foundation is that deep and I need to dig for it, your building is not going to change shapes. Sometimes it does, which sucks. That happens a lot between 30 and 60%. But your shape is the same. A trench is a trench. Only thing that's going to change is the depth and the width. So if I code my sheet out, only thing I have to do is enter in that column. Oh, it went from 2 feet to 3 feet deep. Oh, it went from 5 feet to 6 feet. Like, and you change that up, you can do your estimate in like a short time frame. And sometimes like you have to do estimating on the job as a field engineer. Like a design you put in a change order, that design changes. And now you need to know how to do the work so you can go out and tell your crew like this is changed. And then you also have to do
Right, but we don't have a course for Excel, right?
No, that's why I went outside of engineering and I took it.
Everybody needs to know Excel. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. For me, I just
kind of assumed that everybody knows how to use it, but you know, there's using it and there's using it. As Kennedy said, you know, adding numbers and subtracting numbers is not knowing how to use Excel.
So you need to know.
It's very powerful if you know all the features.
The course you took, Kennedy, was it in the business department in UB?
Yes, it was.
Do you
it was undergrad.
Do you happen to know do you happen to remember the course number by chance? I guess I could look for it, but
no, I think it's a freshman course though, so it's easy to find.
Okay, no problem. I'm gonna look into it. Thanks.
Yeah, it was some engineers majors that took that course with me too, so you won't be the only one.
That question was already asked also by Justin in the chat. So maybe if you find it, Nick, maybe you could, you know, let me know or let us know, and then we can manage to send that to Justin. And then also Brent asked the question, any recommendations for taking the FE exam?
Yes, take it.
It is, if you take it recent, like pretty close to school, and you study, you'll be fine. I have a lot of friends that weren't as good in school as some of my other friends, and they did perfectly fine.
I found that taking practice exams was also really helpful because they don't get into like super specifics for each topic, but like kind of the nature of the way they ask questions, it's helpful to kind of have an understanding of that going into the exam.
I'll just add one thing. I think it's also important to kind of know the reference manual that comes with it. Part of the exam is being able to know what the question is and find the equation or find the part of the reference manual that you need to refer to in order to answer the question. So time management with that will definitely help.
I have a question for the alums. Are you using MathCAD for equations? I mean, your calculations?
So for us at SGH, yeah, we use MathCAD for a lot of things, mainly because everything's virtual now. They used to have big, thick project binders where they would put all their hand calcs in, and that's kind of like the Stone Age. So now everything's digital. And we do use Excel for a lot of things to help optimize, but a lot of times we need to produce a calculation package to show our clients, and Excel doesn't work great when you need to produce a nice calculation package. So we use MathCAD to do a lot of our calculations for us. We have built-in programs. We have ready-made MathCAD sheets to go through and use, and that's a big bulk of our design.
Do you use MATLAB at all? We've had a little debate because we have MATLAB available at UB. We don't have MathCAD available.
No, we do. We have MathCAD.
We do?
In Edit 208 and Furnace 1018. I bought.
Right, but not remotely. So
when I was at UB, I used MathCAD Prime, which is like the free version, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we decided to kind of pay and get the actual full version. So we have it now in all the computers. But you're right, there's a Prime version, which is free.
My company uses a
So
good
it's
amount
good
of.
for students. Think about using that next year and getting used to
Use
using
it.
it. So
Use it for your homeworks, and your TAs will love you.
My company uses a decent amount of MathCAD. I haven't used it as much since it's mostly for like calculation packages and making the calcs look neat, but it is pretty commonly used. And unfortunately, MATLAB isn't. I love MATLAB. They've talked about getting it, but I've branched out into learning Python because it does a lot of the same stuff for free. So if you are like me and love MATLAB and used it for your classes, I recommend learning Python because not every company has MATLAB.
New question in the chat from Edward. Did you guys take any prep classes for FE?
There is one at UB that I had a couple friends take and they that thought it helped. That's in the fall for their senior year. But I personally didn't.
yeah, I'll send out information at the end of the summer, beginning of the fall semester about that.
Yeah, when we talk about it in 415 too, in the first week of 415, but I would strongly recommend take it as soon as you're eligible before you forget everything.
I have a question towards Kennedy as well again. Does the FE give you any edge in the construction industry? And also, do you utilize LEAD? So I know a lot of I know a lot of people talking about LEAD. Does it make sense looking into doing the LEAD exam and stuff prior to entering the industry?
So with the FE, so I would say when I first entered the industry, it didn't really give me an edge. But now my company, because I said we're leaning towards design build, it is giving us an edge and it is an advantage because at first it wasn't because we didn't really work with a lot of designers. And to get your PE, you need to have an amount of years working with a design firm. But now that the industry is going towards that, even now, it's not too late for anyone who didn't take their FE to circle back and take it. But I would say like Braden was saying, take it closer to while you're in school. You could take it and more than likely everyone's doing design build. You'll get your design experience and you'll be able to get your PE if you want. And I think there is obviously some compensation that you could ask for because you have your FE, right? And then you will more than likely, not a lot of even with Kiewit, there's not a lot of people who have PEs that can stamp off on when we do our design build work. And so you will become like an asset with your company. So that is something that you can look into. Yes, I did, Ava. I did mean to send that to everybody. So I'll just say here, MGQ 201 is the course that I took. That is business statistics. But being that I took what Professor Wang already took statistics, for me, the focus wasn't learning statistics. I already knew statistics. So that component was very easy for me. They just business, they smart. And they get to use Excel for their statistic courses. And but so everything is all about functions. It's not really the study of statistics like it is with us. Theirs is all about how to use Excel to do statistics. So from there, I was able to do freeze panel, freeze frame, and learning all my VLOOKUPs and how to code. That's basically what they do, is how do you code, how do you create spreadsheets. So that's a course that I would recommend taking for all the construction engineers.
For in New York City, a lot of work now requires PEs, especially in geotech. They require PEs for inspection, so the FE is definitely important to get a leg up.
Other questions?
I'll add on that PE thing. In structures, it's kind of like a no-brainer. You have to be a PE to sign and seal drawings. So if you want to go into the structural engineering concentration, I would definitely recommend going for and taking your FE as soon as you're eligible.
What about you, Caitlin? Do you plan on getting your PE? Do you need to have a PE in your area?
Yeah, for water resources, you definitely have to, especially because like Kennedy was kind of saying, we're designing for construction a lot. And so all the drawings need to be stamped by a PE and kind of supervised by a PE for the drainage, site development, those kind of things. And kind of to also touch on the MathCAD discussion, I do like, if you aren't super interested in like very intense math, I don't do a ton of math. Most of the like programs and softwares like HydroCAD and stuff that I use do the math for me. So water resources is the move for that. And like, if you're just like environmentally minded, and yeah, definitely something to look into.
New question in the chat. How do you factor in your desired work location into choosing specialties or types of work? Question is from Jesse.
In terms of structures, the only thing I could think about is that if you're really interested in like earthquake engineering or something like that, and you want to work on the East Coast, you're going to have a tough time getting a lot of experience with that. You know, whereas if you move to California, a lot of your design will be earthquake based. Whereas in New York, everything is governed by wind. So that's kind of how location can factor in with structures.
I would say for construction is very wide ranging. As for me, I chose structures and like construction as my go-to disciplines when I was at UB. So I was planning on working on bridges. That was like my aspiration. But when I went to Kiewit, like they sell that they do horizontal. So it's like horizontal versus vertical when you're doing construction. And I was planning on doing horizontal, but they're like, you know, this is California. We have droughts. I mean, we actually are planning on having a drought next month. So they're like, water treatment plants is the focus. So I never really get to touch bridges. It's more dams and water treatment plants. But if I was to go towards Midwest or the East, I probably would do more bridge work when it comes to Kiewit. So yeah, like when it comes to construction, be mindful of vertical versus horizontal. Make sure that your company does whichever one you want. And that does play a part when it comes to your tech electives. So obviously I'm not going to use my pavement design as much as I like doing water treatment plants, but there are paving and that's a huge scope. Like millions of dollars went into that scope and I was so surprised. Pavement matters.
Yeah. And then obviously for like what I do, municipal engineering, there's municipalities, towns across the country that probably have similar roles of doing utility, so water and sewer and storm sewer and drainage design. And I work also for private kind of clients across the country. And so permitting for kind of the installation of utilities is different, as well as stormwater design requirements differs, because obviously there's different rain in California versus in upstate New York. So that's something to be mindful of.
Yeah, I'll add on for transportation. It's also a pretty wide range. With transportation engineering, you mostly work with DOTs. So it is really good to get specific in at least one state, but working for a giant company, you really do get to do work in almost any state where your company is located. And you just have to dig into standards more. But yeah, a lot of our principals do go on to get their PEs in multiple states. So that's definitely also a consideration.
Thank you. Another question in the chat from Peter. If he were to continue on, would you recommend that he gets a master's or an MBA? Which one is more versatile and is it worth it?
I would start with, what do you want to do? If your goal is to be a manager, and a lot of engineers move up into management, you know, relatively quickly, it's good. That's a question. If you ask 10 different people, you'll probably get 10 different variable answers. My personal opinion is, if I'm hiring a newer engineer, an MBA isn't important to me, because they don't really have a clue as to how the organization works. And all those skills that you learn through getting your MBA are much more useful once you've been in the organization and understand how it works and move up into a higher level of management, you know, mid-level manager or higher. And that's where those things, you know, really come into play, because when you're entry level or a junior engineer, you don't really get to affect those kind of changes in the organization that you can bring about, you know, with those skills. So I think my personal opinion is a deeper technical understanding is more valuable to me if I'm hiring someone, but others may have totally different opinion on that.
Well, both Braden and Alex and Mustafa's getting it, but you have your master's, technical master's. Mustafa's, so explain, I mean, what was your decision process?
Oh, I actually, okay, I actually completely agree with Professor Kaminski, because I wanted to go into technical analysis. I don't want to be a manager still. It's probably going to change, because I've heard upper engineering is mostly management, but I wanted to go do technical work on models, work on analysis, and the master's was the best way to do that.
And actually for geotech, like to get in a big reputable company, you really need a master's. Yeah. And I think maybe Alex, you might say the same for some of the biggest structural engineering companies in the city.
Yeah. Especially,
yeah, so,
oh,
go ahead, Braden.
I was going to say, especially geotech, because if you look at the technical electives, kind of for structures, you're getting like 1, maybe 2 real hard technical classes for geotech. So you really need the masters to help get that extra technical knowledge that really helps serve as the baseline.
I'd say it's very similar for structures. I know SGH and a lot of companies, actually, the entry level position, one of the requirements is that you have a master's degree. So in New York City, it'd be hard to land a job in the New York City market without a master's. That being said, I do want to move up into like the upper management level. And so an MBA might be, good for me down the line, but I think coming right out of school, it's probably more important in structural engineering to have a master's degree.
Yeah, and I can add on currently being in my master's. So I was also interested in the MBA program, but yeah, like Braden said, I also wanted to be more deep in design, a lot more technical analysis. And I would say going for an MBA is more towards never going for a principal position or project manager. But I mean, part of like now, I've been noticing the School of Engineering has been adding on a lot more engineering management graduate programs. So my particular program is like sustainable transportation and logistics, which is actually half school of management, half school civil engineering. So I decided to kind of pursue that route, kind of go half and half. So get technical analysis and part of the logistics and management side. So definitely explore the graduate programs, because the School of Engineering is adding new programs almost like every year.
So I know it's 7:58, so the hour is almost up. I want to be mindful of everybody's time. So maybe if we want to just go around to all the panelists, and if you have any last sort of thoughts to leave us with, I think that would be wonderful. But really appreciate everybody joining us today and for all the insights that you've given us. So
I was going to ask Alex, Mustafa, and Braden, since all 3 of them were TAs for Capstone, if they wanted to share any wisdom too as a final thought.
When Kaminski says start early, start early.
Yep, definitely that.
Yeah, I'd say be a team player. Don't get stuck being the one person that doesn't do any work, because it will definitely bite you in the end. So.
Yeah, and part of being this year's TA, the transportation course, I mean, there is a lot more stuff you could do with the transportation capstone, but now it's layered where if you go into geotechnical, transportation, or structural, you'll kind of really learn down the design for your specific field. So it's definitely really valuable, and definitely explore technical electives. If you're considering one field, definitely take at least 2 technical electives you think you want to take for that track.
And the TAs, last year especially, we had McManaman coming for the geotech elective, professionals to help out. Listen to them. I learned a lot as TA, just sitting in the room muted, listening to McManaman teach the lecture. So it's definitely like, use the resources that Kaminski is getting you guys. So they're there for a reason, even though sometimes they seem boring on a Friday at 4 p.m. when our recitations were, but they are important.
Last question in the chat is, do you advise getting your master's directly after graduation or working for some time?
I would say like from the previous direction of MBA versus masters, like it really depends on what you want. If you're not sure that you want to go into, let's say, geotech design, I would recommend trying to work to see how you like it before getting a master's. But if it's what you want to do and you want to do technical stuff that you need a master's for, then that's a situation. And before, like one thing that Professor Human helped me out with in advising is I took 2 grad classes in my senior spring. So I was able to get my master's in a year and really like shorten it up to help with finances and stuff. So there's a lot of options out there for
Yeah, I'd
everyone.
agree with Braden. I did something similar too. I took a couple of master's classes during my spring, in my undergrad. I think if you definitely know you want to, get your master's, it's probably easier to get it right after undergrad. You're still kind of in the school mindset. I'm studying for the PE right now, and it is very difficult to go through a full day of work and then have to sit down and study again. So once you get used to the working lifestyle, you might not want to go back. So.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of taking them side by side, started working in grad school at the same time. And I would definitely recommend you don't really try that unless you're gonna go part-time. I went full-time both. But I mean, I thought it was really interesting because being on the field, I got to really see more into the analysis on the grad school side. And then also being in the field, I get to learn cutting new like methods and technology that I could apply right away in the field. So I thought that was kind of a cool aspect of taking them both side by side.
So I want to add, I actually worked for 3 years before I went to grad school. And one of it was knowing what area I wanted to be in. But as a geotech, I actually found those years working, getting dirty, seeing the soil really helped me when I went to grad school, really understand the concepts a lot better. So I was happy I did that. But yeah, it's pretty scary going back to school after working for 3 years and those first exams and kind of getting back into that school mindset. But I think ultimately it worked for me. Maybe 3 years, it was a little bit too long. But I think, as Braden said, it's a personal choice, and there's no one decision that's right. It's, whatever makes the most sense for you. And it's always gonna be different. Anybody, any last minute? I know.
I'll kind of speak like a final thought on kind of the environmental track, because kind of throughout my schooling, I was kind of like unsure what I was doing in civil engineering. I was like, I'm not really passionate about structures. I'm not super passionate about transportation. And I was kind of interested in those like water resource classes like groundwater and hydrologic and the treatment processing. And I was like, should I be an environmental engineer? I don't know. But so ultimately taking the environmental design capstone classes and taking hydrologic and groundwater and sustainability in those classes, and kind of going into the water resource, it's really helpful. In municipal engineering, I get to see a ton of different types of projects, from stormwater and sewer design, and you kind of utilize a lot of hydrologic and stuff like that. But it's also important to have the civil background, because with grading and the site development projects that I see, you need to kind of understand still like pavement design, concrete slabs, and like the structural components of those, as well as like drainage and transportation inside. So definitely don't be discouraged if you're like, structural engineering is not for me, I don't know what I'm doing here, because there's options and alternatives.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Do you ever think about, in your area, Caitlin, would you need a master's in environmental, or you have enough, that great balance between environmental civil is what you need to be successful in your area? I think it's like sufficient. I mean, I'm not working a lot on a ton of like environmental projects, but I do see a few of those just in the way that my like department is structured. We're kind of combined with the environmental. So I do environmental inspections and stuff occasionally, but it also was helpful to have a taste of kind of
environmental to see if that was something I wanted to explore, and kind of like help me solidify that I was interested in some of the civil components of that field. And in my department, in the municipal department, I think the majority of my coworkers also took a similar water resources route, taking hydrologic and those kind of courses. So even the director of planning and development at the airport, this is kind of an aside because this is aviation, he actually graduated from UB, and like prior to him taking on that role, he worked in a similar municipal role, kind of working with water resources and site development and things like that. So it's definitely something like you don't kind of understand the opportunities there are out there until you're in the field and kind of like navigating it, or at least that's my experience.
This is kind of an aside, but there's been a few alumni that have actually said that they think we should have a technical elective that's more focused on drainage and civil site design.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, site design is a huge part of what I do. And obviously like stormwater and understanding that, as well as like site utilities and sizing for sewers and storm sewers. So.
Is it too late, Dr. Human, to ask one last quick question? Oh.
As long as the panelists are okay. I mean, students, I'll understand if you need to go. You've probably had, I know you've had a long day today, so thank you for joining us. But as long as the panelists are okay staying a little bit longer, it's not too late to ask a question, Nicholas.
So the question is like, I guess the panelists and like, I guess the new members who now enter the field, what tips do you guys have for like now entering the work industry and an aspect of salary negotiation? How do you know, like, how do you know, like, hey, it's too much, hey, it's too little, like just that topic, I guess, to somebody newer individuals who enter the field? How should we approach that topic?
I'm not the best at this, but for salary negotiation, the one tool I like looked up was the ASCE, which you should get a $5 student membership. It's worth it. Has a salary like placement tool. If you say what your like expertise is, where you want to work, what kind of work, it has kind of like a baseline estimate salary. 100% recommend that, and that's like what I used, and it's the only thing I used. And like you can ask some of your classmates if they're comfortable with it. Like me and I think 4 of my friends that I graduated with, like John Murphy, Tim, Carlos, Orestes, like we all talked like within our group. So it helps just to, you know, get a feel for where that, but the salary tool definitely.
Another question.
Career services too. I'll throw that out there. You know, take advantage of career services. You know, that's part of your tuition, and they can give you some advice on that. But you can always ask for more money than what they offer, but you should have a justification for that. You know, why you feel you're worth more, not just because you want more.
I would say for like salary negotiation, you kind of get stonewalled a little bit. So make sure that like, because sometimes they said like being within a company, I know that they tell us, because I've recruited, they tell us like, hey, this is what they do like their research and they say this is what the market is, and this is what we can afford, and this is what we're going to offer. And like, if they try and talk you out of it, just tell them this is what you're sticking with. And they'll try and sell you on, well, you can grow, and they'll sell you on different things. But they'll say no to negotiation. But what you should do, and I would say, is negotiate other things. So they didn't bump my salary, but I was like, hey, I'm going from the East to West Coast. I'm a broke college student. I can't afford that move. So they paid for it. So like you can negotiate other things like that. Like you can negotiate like, hey, I need help moving, or hey, I'm gonna need a car out there, or hey, I need time in a hotel to find an apartment. Like you can negotiate those things. Like salary may be hard, but make sure that you're not being put out there just to move and work with that company. There's other things you can negotiate to make that transition really easy.
Yeah, kind of to what Kennedy said, I was able to get like a moving bonus or stipend when I took the job, because I was moving from Buffalo to Syracuse, which like is not a real big move, but like I was still able to get money for that. And I also think it's important to kind of be cognizant of the fact that like compensation is so much more inclusive than just like a salary. Like 401k contributions and time off and things like that are also really big.
And healthcare.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not just like how much you're paid per hour, because there's like 401k contributions and things like that that also you should take into consideration.
Right. In the last few years, I've had a woman comes in from National Fuel Company and talks about exactly what Caitlin just talked about. It says when you're looking at compensation, you have to look at the entirety of it, not just the salary, because there's so many more things that get rolled into that. So that's a great point. But I would never be afraid to ask for more money if you think you need it, or there's some compelling reason why you think the salary should be adjusted higher. If somebody really likes you, they're not going to pull the offer. I mean, if they offer you 60 and you say you want 90, they might think you're a little nuts. But if they offer you 60 and maybe you have another offer at 65, but you like this company better, there's no fear in asking for that. If they don't want to pay it, they'll tell you that. But they're not going to pull the offer because you ask for more money. If it's reasonable.
And if they did pull the offer, you don't want to work there.
Exactly. Yeah. So.
Okay.
So I wouldn't have a lot of fear on that point.
Well,
Yeah, I just want to add on. Also, your internship experience is valuable too. Like I was working at the DOT for almost a year and a half, so I used that to get like a couple thousand more added to my salary. So definitely weigh your credentials.